What's up, guys? This is Bryant Parr in the car, and today we're going to talk about deaths in movies. Now, deaths in movies come in a variety of categories, really. Y'all know what death is, so I'm not going to explain it to you. But, yeah, we're just going to go over a couple of the things here. First is the, I call it the anthill death. You know when you're a kid and you step on a bunch of ants and they're all dead, you don't really care about them because they're ants. Those are those kind of deaths in movies. You see them a lot in action movies where the good guy gets wronged and he goes after all these bad guys and he kills them off and he's just pecking them off one by one. That's the anthill death. And, you know, they're just cannon fodder, henchmen kind of guys we don't really care about, but we feel only slightly guilty because they died, and we should, but we don't. Next is the evil villain death. Now, the evil villain death comes in several types. The most common one is when the evil villain does a whole bunch of evil stuff and he finally dies in the end, or he gets his comeuppance, and everyone's just so relieved because this guy won't be causing any more harm. That's the evil villain death. This generally met with applause or relief or some form of happiness. Maybe not happiness, but relief. Just generally a good thing for this particular person to die. Next is the death of a loved one. Now, the death of a loved one comes just like in real life, where it's the death of a loved one, someone that we care about, or someone that they had worked with, the hero had worked with somewhat closely at some point in time. You know, you walk into a store and you talk to the clerk for about 10 minutes about just random stuff, and you find out the next week that she died, or she was killed, or she passed away, and you really start to feel bad about it because it's, you know, it sort of hit close to home. But the next one is the best friend death. Now, I categorize this differently than the loved one death. It is technically the loved one. Crap, I'm not gonna be able to do that. It is technically a loved one that died, but it's much more personal and close. You know, you have the hero and his best friend, and they're working together, and all of a sudden he gets killed or injured or whatever. It really drives the main character to justice or revenge or whatever it may call for. Getting a lot of sunlight in here. I can't really dim it out. But it really drives the main character. It's a little bit different than the death of a loved one. You could say that it is the death of a loved one because you do care about them very deeply. But this one is a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more really, really close to home. And it's like the ultimate close call. But the next one, and probably the last one, well, no, the next one in line is kind of an interesting one. It's the death of your enemy's loved one. Now, this one comes in a little bit of a different it's a little bit of a different situation. You know, sometimes, a lot of times in many movies and shows, bonds can be made with the main hero and his arch enemy. You see it a lot in Batman versus the Joker. There's an episode where someone supposedly kills Batman, and the Joker is really upset about it because now he can't play with anybody anymore because his best friend is gone. And even though they're arch enemies, they did technically still bond, and so you really feel for your enemies. You really start to feel for your enemy that you almost feel bad for them. You know, and in fact, sometimes you might feel bad for them because they did lose someone that they love. You know, you can kind of feel for them. There's an episode of The Last Airbender that Zuko's uncle, that the Zuko and his uncle and Team Avatar are fighting against Azula, and something happens to Uncle Iroh. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for Zuko, and is there anything I can do? Even though they're enemies, they still feel bad for him because they know what it's like to lose someone they love, someone that's close to them, and so they start to feel sympathy for their enemy. And last but not least is the death of the hero. The death of a hero is a huge deal, especially when you kill off your main character. It's supposed to emphasize several different things. Typically, when the hero dies, it's because of a sacrifice that was made, or maybe your bad guy amped it up and did something dirty and snuck into the hero's house and killed him in his sleep or whatever. It's supposed to be this powerful driving force that that really is supposed to strike hard at the heart of the audience, and it really, really does. It's just this powerful surge. If you ever watch a movie where the hero dies, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's supposed to be this powerful driving force, and usually it conveys some sort of message. In Batman versus Superman, Superman supposedly dies. Yeah, they're gonna pull that string again, that stupid fake out death cliche. He's Superman, you can't kill him, he lives forever. It's going to be material for the next movie when Superman finally comes back and he's just this hero and he saves the day, or a lot of times he's the ex machina. They'll have this really extended fake death cliche, where you'll have a fake out death and they'll come back like a couple days later because they really didn't die. But like I said, it's supposed to be this driving force, and it's supposed to convey some sort of message to the audience. A lot of times the message that it'll convey is that we're not all guaranteed tomorrow. Every single one of us is in some sort of danger, and can really be just this dangerous thing. It's supposed to instill in us that fighting is wrong, and that we're all supposed to work together and not necessarily be buddy friends or anything, but we all need to work together for the common good and set aside our differences rather than fighting it out like a couple of like a bunch of children. That's why a lot of times you see children fight over silly little things, whereas an adult would just be like, alright, well, I'll tell you what, here's what I'll do, and you can do your own thing, and then we'll just call it even. It's supposed to instill in us a message that we already know in ourselves, but we don't want to address it because of whatever reason. In Superman dies because he sacrificed himself to save Metropolis, or was it Metropolis or Gotham that the final scene was in? I forget whichever one, to save whichever city. he sacrifices himself and kills Doomsday in order to save Batman and Wonder Woman and either city that they were fighting in. It's supposed to be this really powerful surge of emotion. You really feel for it. And that's a lot of times what movies are all about. Movies are not necessarily about the good guy getting the bad guy, and everyone goes home happy. Not everyone goes home happy. Sometimes people go home in a casket. And things aren't always going to be a good thing. Things aren't, the days of love wins in the end, or good always triumphs over evil. Not necessarily. It's supposed to challenge our morals. It's supposed to challenge our morals and challenge our way of thinking. Because, like I said, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. You could step outside your front door and get hit with a rock and die. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. And it's supposed to make us think and address the issues that we don't normally address on a regular basis. But like I said, the death of a hero makes us challenge ourselves in a way that we wouldn't normally challenge ourselves, or make us think in a way that we wouldn't normally think. It makes us appreciate the hero even more after their death, because it makes us appreciate what we had. They say you never know what you got until it's gone. And that is so true, especially with the death of a hero. But the main message is to preserve life and be grateful with what you got, because life is a very precious thing. This has been Bryant, Parr in the car. Have a good one.